It's not unreasonable to want to know how much money you'll make depending on what your role or your responsibilities are in the NHS. Now, previously we've done a video about, what the generic nodal pay levels are and the different ways pay progression works, and we've shown you our payslip at earlier points in our career, but we thought it's really vital for you to see what a registrar's payslip looks like at an ST3 to an ST5 level in England, and that's what we're going to do in today's video.
If this is the first time you're checking out our channel, welcome. Basically what we do is we run a website that's totally free known as roadtok.com, and it will explain the ins and outs about everything related to the United Kingdom and what it takes for you to work as a doctor in the NHS. So if you've not already, please stalk us on all of our social media. Find us on Facebook, find us on Twitter, Instagram, and of course YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe.
Hi everyone, my name's Ibreez and I currently work as a doctor in the NHS, and your pay slip or your pay stub or your paycheck or whatever you want to call it, it's really, really important. Obviously because you want to get paid. But on top of that, you should be looking at it on a monthly basis. Every month when you get paid, typically around the 28th of each month, you should, a couple of days before that, get some form of a pay slip. In your hospital, it might be they deliver it to you and it's actually like a piece of paper, or your hospital might have it online and you get a notification that you can check it online. The reasons why it's really important that you're checking it on a regular basis is, of course, to make sure you're getting paid the amount that you should be paid, that you're on the correct tax code, and that, of course, it's made out to you and it has all of your details correct. A lot of people want to keep track of their pay slips over a period of time. They feel that this is something that they want to refer back to at the end of the tax year, so that's not a bad idea as well. If you are getting your payslip in a printed out form, just keep it in some sort of document or file or folder for you to reference when you need it. And if you're getting it online, download it and keep it somewhere safe. So what we're going to get into today is what a registrar's payslip looks like. And when I'm talking about a registrar level, I'm talking about an ST3 to an ST5. Or, you'll see on my payslip, it actually says CT3. It's the same thing. Like, don't get into the semantics of these titles too much, but it is a reg payslip. The difference between a registrar's payslip and payslips that you've seen us do earlier is that there are different nodal points that you will reach during your career as a doctor. As you are progressing, there is pay progression as well. So what a foundation doctor makes is not the same thing as what a core trainee makes, and it's not the same thing as what a specialty registrar makes, and it's not the same thing as what a consultant makes. The basic pay and the additional pay that comes on top of that will vary as you move up. So my payslip is at a CT3 level or an ST3 level, and this goes up to ST5. After ST5, there's another pay progression, and that goes up to ST8, and the next pay progression after that is as a consultant. So the important things to look at when we're looking at my payslip: first of all, make sure it's made out to you. You don't want somebody else getting paid for your work. You need to check your tax code. As I said before, you can see my tax code number. You might be wondering why mine is a little bit higher than yours or higher than what they show generally on websites like the salary calculator. The reason for this is you can adjust your tax code. You can tell the government what you are putting into that you actually need some tax relief on. We have an article describing how you can do that that's linked in the description box. So check that out if you've not already done that. The other important thing about the tax code is you need to make sure you're getting a cumulative tax. It shouldn't say non-cumulative or emergency or anything like that. The tax code is also really important because, see, that number that you see there, that's the amount of money that isn't going to be taxed. So about 13,500-ish is the amount that I am not getting taxed in a year's amount of time because of whatever I've put forth and the government has agreed. So if you don't adjust your tax code, it'll stay at the basic level that it's at unless the government chooses to increase it later on at some point. So make sure on a yearly basis you are checking out if you are updating all the things that you need to update to the government, and you're telling them everything that's correct and true, and it will be adjusted accordingly. The other things you can see is my basic pay. So this is the basic pay at my level in England. This basic pay is the same for all individuals across this region who are working at the level that I am working at. Basic pay means if I'm doing the 9 to 5 Monday to Friday, which is why if you see just across from that, it shows 40 hours of work, because that is the basic, okay? Now, when you go down a little bit and you see actually how my pay is broken down, you will see two columns. The column on my left is the money that's coming in, and the column on my right is the money that's going out, taxes, deductions, etc. The column that shows the money coming in consists of my basic pay, my unsocial hours, my on-calls, my night shifts, my weekends, etc., etc. This amount can vary depending on your role and how many and how frequent your on-calls are. So the role I was doing here, I was working as a medical registrar in my on-call, and then I had ward responsibilities on my normal days. So you can see then the frequency and the amount of that is very variable. You might feel like, okay, there are some rotations where even though it's in the same year, I'm working at the same level, I'm making just a little bit more than I was in my last rotation. And that's more than likely due to the fact that you are also doing more on-calls or more unsocial hours than you were previously, and then an increase in that, or the frequency of those being increased, means that your pay will also increase. It makes sense, doesn't it? Now, when it comes to deductions, your deductions may also vary from mine because maybe you don't contribute to the pension scheme. You don't have to. We have a video talking about the pension scheme if you're wondering whether or not that's something that you want to get involved in. On top of that, you might be having your money taken out from that side in some stuff like a salary sacrifice scheme. So for instance, maybe you bought a car through a salary sacrifice scheme through the NHS fleet services, so they are taking some of that money from there. But other than that, what we're actually seeing being deducted is the national insurance and then your tax. The one good thing about working in the NHS in this situation is you do not have to file your taxes at the end of the year. It will be done for you, and all of that is there for you to see. But that's why it's still really important that you're checking and making sure the amount that's being deducted is the correct amount, and that you are not either oversubscribing on one end or actually underpaying on another. Now, if we look at the very bottom, we're seeing that I'm being paid on a monthly basis because this is my monthly pay slip, and you're seeing the full amount that goes into the bank account at the end of the month after all deductions. So this amount for me pretty much stays fairly stable. I can generally assume that I will be getting about $3,500 in my bank account every month. It may go up by a couple of pounds here or there, and that's just down to how frequent maybe that my on-calls were that month or other small little things. But it's never variable to the point where I'm like, this is like 100 pounds less, or it's, 200 pounds more, but it doesn't make sense. So it's, again, really important that you know how much is coming in. I think a lot of international doctors make this mistake where they just assume, well, money's gone to the bank, that's fine, it should be that amount. That's generally how much it is. But you should never just trust the system in that manner. You should know how much you're getting paid because you're working hard, and it's no good if you're not getting paid the amount that you should be paid for the amount of effort that you're putting in. Now, those of you who might be wondering at this point, okay, well, what about locums? Some hospitals will put the locum amount within the same payslip, and you'll see both of them there. Some hospitals will do them separately. We have a video separately about locum pay and about making extra money in that manner that you can check out if y'all are interested. But this one is a pure, without locums, just your general registrar pay for doing 1 month on the ward as well as medical on-calls. The next question you guys might ask is, all right, fine, Ibreez, this is your payslip as a medical registrar, but I'm going to be a surgical registrar, or a pediatric registrar, or psych registrar, so obviously my pay is going to be wildly different. It really shouldn't differ that much. What you're looking at really is down to the frequency of the on-calls. That's what's going to make a big difference, and if those resident or non-resident on-calls are coming into play here. What I mean by that is, as a medical registrar, I do resident on-calls. It would be pretty cool if I could do a non-resident medical registrar on-call, but the reality of the situation is whenever anything catastrophic happens in the hospital, they call the med-reg and we come running. So that means I have to be in the hospital, I have to be there if anything needs to get done. But some specialties like a surgical reg or a psych reg, depending on your hospital or wherever you're covering, you will be doing non-resident on-calls, which means technically, yeah, you've got to be next to your phone, you've got to be easily contactable. You might have to come in depending on what happens, but for the most part, you're expected to be at home and, someone can get into contact with you if they need to get into contact with you. So the percentage of pay that comes out or that's added in addition to your basic pay may be a little bit less than what somebody who's doing a resident on-call would be getting because, of course, the demand is different. So if you're wondering why there are slight fluctuations, it also may be down to the fact that maybe you're not doing as many resident on-calls as you were previously. Remember the most important thing, your basic pay should not be changing. Whatever my basic pay is at my level, and if you're at that same nodal point or level, you will be making that same basic pay. So if you choose, I actually don't want to do anything more than 40 hours a week, Monday to Friday, that's my bread and butter, then you'll be taking that basic pay home after everything is divided and calculated and subtracted. But your basic pay shouldn't vary. What I want to make clear again, guys, is this is a payslip for England. You will notice if you're working in Scotland, Northern Ireland, or Wales that the basic pays and the nodal points are a little different, and that's just because they're on different contracts. Since the majority of our viewers we know are from England, of course we have our payslips working in England ourselves, that's what we're showing. If any of you all have your payslips from any of the other devolved nations and you want us to discuss those, if you don't mind sending them to us, we can go over them. But honestly, it's the same thing. You just have to know what your basic pay is for the region that you're working in, and you need to ensure you're getting the correct deductions, calculations, and percentages in and out, as well as the correct tax code. All of that stays the same. Now, there might be some of you who are like, okay, that's great, but is this going to be the same for me if I'm in a non-training job? If I'm in a training job, is it the same always? The basic pay is going to be the same no matter what level you're working at. You just have to be at the same level. So if you're a CT3 non-training doctor and a CT3 training doctor, your basic pay will be at that level. And then, of course, the added amendments and things that'll happen with it will be the same. The things where it gets a little bit complicated is your pay progression. In a training post, because you were going through a training program, as you progress, your pay will follow and increase with you, and your contract is basically stipulated and modulated in that manner that they're like, okay, this person's now gone from a CT1 to a CT2, same pay grade, but then CT2 to CT3, new pay grade, new contract. If you're a non-training doctor, you've got to do this yourself. You've got to say, actually, I believe I'm worth more than this because of this amount of experience that I'm working towards or I'm putting in. There are even some applications or forms that can be submitted to say this is an individual who is working at an ST6 level, and even though they're in a non-training job, they should be paid at the ST6 salary, and somebody has to then verify that you've been doing the work that meets that curriculum criteria, and then your pay would be adjusted. You would have a new contract. Some people prefer working in a non-training job for this reason, because you can negotiate how much money you should be getting. Occasionally, non-training doctors have been known to make more than their training equivalent because of their negotiation, because they've said, look, this is the amount of experience I'm bringing to this role, this is the amount of work that I'm putting into this role, I believe I'm actually worth this much, and then it's up to the hospital or the trust to agree or disagree, and then the conversation can get started. So at its most, bare bones level, the level that you're working at and the level somebody in a training program is working at, so long as you're at the same nodal points, you'll be taking the same pay slip home. The only parts that can differ is your progression. You don't automatically, in a non-training job, the next year just go from like a CT1 to a CT2. It doesn't work like that. You would stay in the same place unless you put forth the effort to say, actually, now I think I'm actually working at a registrar level. I think we need to have a discussion about me being on a registrar's contract and making a registrar's pay. So there you have it. The registrar's payslip in England from an ST3 to an ST5 level. Hopefully you guys have a better understanding of pay progression, nodal points, and what your take home looks like and the things that you need to be checking every month. Please remember another important thing that I just do want to plug in now. Your pay will not change from what city you're in unless you're working in London. London will give you an extra amount in, which is known as London weighting, just because London's so expensive. But that doesn't mean, oh, I should only work in London because that means I'll get more money to take home. Please remember that cost of living is also higher there, which is where they put in that extra money so that you kind of balance out. Other than that, pay attention to your payslip, know how much money is coming in, and budget well. Budgeting is like 9/10 of you understanding what to do with your money and, being an adult. So until next time, please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, check out our newsletter if you haven't already, or join in on the conversation in our Road to UK forum, or even book a personalized guidance session if you feel like you need to know a little bit extra. And we'll see you next time. Bye.